Hello, role players. Tim here again. And yes, it's been a while, but I've been quite busy with Hearts and Souls 2nd edition trying to get it together. At the moment, I'm kind of stuck because I have quite a few supervillains to put in the game. Now, the thing is it's supposed to be a complete game, but I don't want to put the entire setting in the core book. Simply for the fact is, it's not everybody's going to want an entire setting already built for them. Some people want the basic idea of a setting, especially in a superhero game, to draw from. But in my experience, most people use one of the big two comics companies, universes, or a combination of the big two. Now, I create my own. I create my own quite often explicitly for the particular characters that I have at that time. There has been some overlap over the years. I have been storing some of these, and I'm continuing to use them today, but little bits here and there. So I'm trying to distill it down to the absolute ultimate minimum number of supervillains to put in the book, both to exemplify powers and to give you an idea of how to do a villain that does X in terms of personality and abilities. Now, that's where it gets a little bit complicated because I'm having a tough time trying to figure out which megalomaniac I want to put in the game, which world conqueror is most important. Originally, I was going to do 3 of each type, but the amount of detail needed for some of these, particularly megalomaniacal characters, is significant because you have them, you have any typical robots, thugs, minions in general that they make use of. Now, I can strip it down to an individual megalomaniac and a couple of other, types that I want to include. But I also want there to be enough so that people can make use of it to draw from. So that's where I run into a problem. I use a lot of megalomaniacal characters, a lot of mastermind world dominators, because generally speaking, when I sit down with a bunch of player characters, I have a group. And a group needs either a solo villain who can take on the entire group, or an opposing group that challenges them as a group. The thing is, though, is it's a lot easier to make one bad guy than to juggle 5 or 6, or in some cases 7, because of the size of my group, trying to juggle individual villains that challenge each individual player, and players are often familiar with the idea of switching partners. So one person who can take them all on is sometimes more intimidating and dangerous for particular types of players than an individual who challenges them directly, especially when they can call in an ally to help them and switch things up a bit. That doesn't mean I don't use those. It's just that I tend to use slightly more masterminds and world conquerors than I do individual heroes. Due to the nature of Hearts and Souls, a character is as powerful as necessary based on their ability to monologue and banter. Now, this creates some interesting issues where I can put somebody who's not normally that powerful against some characters who are, and they manage to hold their own. Now, true, at the end of the night, at the end of the comic book issue, at the end of the adventure, they're going to be suffering a lot more than somebody who is at the outset, without having the monologue, without having the banter, more than equal than a group of player characters. They're going to have broken bones, broken limbs, their support systems are going to be destroyed, they're going to be in prison and hurting. While the megalomaniacal character, the mastermind, may have his plans ruined and some of his toys damaged. Because of the nature of Hearts and Souls, it plays out a lot like comic books, because typically the masterminds get away. We're talking characters like Doctor Doom, characters like some versions of Dr. Octopus, but not always, because he's often a solo villain against a solo hero. Graviton, Lex Luthor. And that's the type of characters we're talking about as characters capable of dominating the world, who have that kind of world-shaping ability in terms of personality. Not necessarily raw power, but personality. Now, I'm trying to stick with putting 3 in, but choosing which 3 is where it gets down to brass tacks. Because I have a lot of problems uh, making up my mind when it comes to that. Because I want to exemplify something. I've got one that definitely is going in, and that's Count Cortex, because he is one of my uh, most delightful creations in terms of crazy supervillains. He is psychic, he is in a robotic body, so he's tough both mentally and physically. He is polite, but he's still an evil individual. He also rules a nation, and his nation is generally considered wealthy. And in his own nation, in many ways, he's well respected. Not by everybody. I mean, he is a tyrant, after all. But he's a tyrant who makes sure what he controls is usually benefited by him being in control. He wants to rule the world, and he doesn't care what you have to say about it. So that's where the conflict comes in with him. But he has some other issues as well. For example, he has often tried to destroy television broadcast materials over the years because he cannot stand the idea of television and thinks people should read. That's it. He thinks people should read, so he goes out to destroy other forms of entertainment that do not involve educating oneself in his mind. Now, he doesn't mind if you read fiction or entertain yourself with fiction because he feels that literature is important. But he's not exactly sane when he goes down to these things, because there are some television shows that do teach, or used to be anyway. But again, not the most stable person in the world, but still powerful. He's going in there. But then I've got the Shadow Sovereign. I've got Orphan. I've got the Tyrant. I've got a few others that I can put in there that in some ways are masterminds of different scales and ability that might go in there. For example, the Iron Prophet. The Iron Prophet is an android who basically wants to free machines from the slavery of humanity. And he has the ability to kind of convince them of that. It's kind of a machine control ability. He spreads his power and can animate objects that were not originally intended to be sapient machines, as long as they're under the auspices of his power. Some of them, though, have rebelled, for the record. I've had that happen. Got the Iron Prophet. I've got the Shadow Sovereign, who's actually... I've had 2 Shadow Sovereigns, the father and the daughter is the current one. She is the daughter of Dr. Daniel Dark, Dr. Dark, and he took the name Shadow Sovereign because he wanted to rule the world. But he also believes that no person is completely free of moral corruption, and his goals are pretty much to prove that every one of us is corrupt and push us to the most evil versions of ourselves as possible, and then control that for his own plans and pleasures to basically conquer the planet and then conquer maybe the galaxy. His daughter is quite similar. So, world conquerors, moral self-authorities. They want to be in charge. Then there are some like Orphan, who doesn't particularly want to be in charge, but he wants to change the world. Orphan is the last survivor of a timeline that was eradicated, which he tells people was a golden age. Whether it was or not, or just his perspective, nobody knows. But he's quite powerful, and he's able to make changes to try and further his agenda. And he is willing to make hard choices. He seems nice, he seems polite, he'll invite you to tea, but he will totally wipe out that country over there in order to get the world he foresaw or enjoyed, as he claims. And that means man, woman, and child. He's not talking about just taking out the people in authority. He means, I will wipe them out. And he has the power to do it. So he's kind of a bastard. Then there are others that are similar in vein. They want to wipe out humanity. They want to transcend humanity. They want to reshape humanity, rule humanity, etc., etc., etc. So which ones do I use? I know Count Cortex is going in there. Do I put in the Tyrant, who wishes to end humanity because her race was here first, and she feels that they would be able to return if she wipes us out, although right now she's more interested in wiping us out than actually trying to recreate her own species that had died out from fundamentally natural causes? What about the Iron Prophet who wants to free a bulk of what he sees as slaves from our rule, no matter how much it hurts us? You know, who do I put in the core book to give you an example of these kinds of people? Now, I have a list of solo villains and world changers that are not necessarily masterminds. By that, I mean somebody who's a natural disaster. When they enact their power, it's often for completely different reasons than a mastermind sort. For example, I have Baroness Blizzard, who's completely bonkers. Her whole purpose is to have fun, to enjoy the fact that she is a almost godlike being. For example, she thought everybody should learn to ice skate, so she froze the Great Lakes, all of the Great Lakes, in the middle of the summer. So all the people in the Great Lakes area could learn to ice skate. Not exactly playing with the full deck. And there are others, I've got lesser, minor villains that are probably a threat one-on-one to a superhero. I've got some that are in groups that are a threat to other superhero groups. But the whole purpose I'm trying to give is examples of villains, because I'm not putting any heroes in the book. I'm including an example hero, but just to show the character creation processes. I'm not including heroes to pad my book and pad my world. I intentionally wiped out the vast majority of superheroes in my settings, this particular setting, for the simple reason is that I want your player characters to be important in the world. I want them to be the heroes who are making the difference now. Now, if you want to set your game in the 1930s, 1950s, where the heroes were around, you may have to scrub some heroes yourself. Or you can have them, shoulder to shoulder with your own characters. But if you're playing a modern day game set in 2015, which is upcoming, so we're going to say 2015 because Hearts and Souls isn't out yet, then the playground is yours. But I do want to give some nasty bullies and challenges out there as examples for you to draw from. And if you just want to sit down one day and go, I need some supervillains and I don't have any ideas, oh look, this guy will work. That's kind of the aim with the setting material that I am including in the core book. Now, there will be superheroes in the full-on setting book from different time periods. But I'm still going to leave the current time period almost heroes as player characters, that I wrote up and put in the book, extinct. Simply because, you deserve a world to play in for your player characters. Whether you're a player and it's your character, or whether you're the GM and it's your little group of players that want to play in my universe. The whole point is to make a world that's theirs, not just mine. And I've seen that in a lot of superhero games, is they give you these settings, they give you all these other superheroes, and it's like, oh, well, we want to get in the big leagues. Well, fine, you get to be the big leagues. You're the only ones to be the big leagues in your game, in my game. But the whole purpose of that is because there's no sense in making you have to be second best to some fictional entity that's probably never been played. I'd rather it be about played characters rather than things I made up to fill a book and pad pages. Now, not that I don't have thousands upon thousands of superheroes I have played, or at least created and played once. I do have a couple hundred of those. Seriously, I have made characters played once and never got to play again. So I've got some that have been played, but they're not going in the book because it's not about what I do in a superhero game. It's about what you do. Anyway, keeping this short, that's where I'm at. I'm trying to squeeze these supervillains in and not put two similar supervillains in while still having the same thematic drives and some similar goals in the same book. It gets easier when I get down to the more thuggish superheroes, because one or two of those are pretty basic. Just here's a duo, here's a trio, here's a group. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this talk. I'll be doing some more later. I'll probably do some more Game Design 101 next time, rather than talk about what I'm doing. So stay tuned.